Welcome to J is for Justice podcast. If live breaking news and following true crime is your thing, then please consider subscribing to my channel. And if you like what you see in my videos, please consider giving them a thumbs up. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to J is for Justice. Thanks for joining today. We are live, I think, on 3 platforms right now simultaneously. So we'll see how this works out. We've got Facebook, X, and YouTube going today. And we have a very, very special guest who is actually already backstage. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and add Mr. Blum to the stage and get our conversation going. And if you guys recall, we talked about how I got his book. Thank you so much for Evelyn. Evelyn sent this to me, and we're going to be reading it live next week. So I don't know how long it'll take me to read it, but we are going to read through it, all of us together. So if you guys would hit that like button, and welcome Mr. Howard Blum.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you?
All right, good.
Thanks for coming back up. I looked and it was a year ago that we last spoke.
A lot has happened since then.
It sure has. It sure has. First, I don't know if you could hear me or not, but one of my viewers sent me your book, which I'm super stoked about, right? And I'm going to read it live to my audience.
Okay.
So
they can also go out and buy it, but sure.
Oh yeah, I'd love, a lot of them already have. But we're going to read it together with our members. So I'm looking forward to that.
Well, that's terrific. Thank you. I put some time putting it together, and I'm glad that hopefully people will be interested in what I said. I know it's been doing well, and I'd like to get it out there to as many people as possible.
Absolutely. And I've got the link, you guys, to the Amazon link where you can purchase it. It should be scrolling in the chat during this live stream. So easy way to purchase it through Amazon. But yeah, I'm interested in talking to you more now that we have this plea deal and a lot of things that have happened. So the first thing I want to talk about is Bryan's professor, Catherine Ramsland. You had some really interesting info in the book regarding their contact, which she denied.
Well, I don't think that's quite accurate. She denied one aspect of the contact. She does not deny that she contacted Bryan Kohberger's family in the days after his arrest. What I did get wrong, and I'll concede this, I had said that she was in contact with him when he first arrived at Washington State. That's what I was told. She tells me that she was not in contact with him. The last time she was in contact with him was in the spring of 2022, just about the time when he ordered the knife on Amazon. So at that point, she said she saw no red flags, but that's where we get it wrong. What we also disagree about a bit is that she said she had contacted the family out of concern for them. I accept that. I mean, I wish I had a professor when I was going to college and graduate school who would contact my family if I ever got into any problems. However, then she went on Brian Entin, who's a great reporter, just after the plea bargain deal and said, Brian asked her, would you want to write about Brian? Would you want to interview him? And she said, that's been in my mind for the past 2.5 years. I've been thinking about that. And that time period, 2.5 years, certainly includes the time when Brian was first arrested. So perhaps I would suggest, with letting her be the final say, but perhaps she was a bit disingenuous when she was just saying she was contacting the parents out of concern.
Right. And I noticed when she made her statement after it came out that you said that, but she said, I didn't have contact with him via email. And I thought that was interesting that she specifically just said email. So I was like, well, Did you text?
maybe she's parsing it. I mean, I will give her the benefit of the doubt that if she says she didn't have contact with him, I'll accept that. It's sort of in many ways irrelevant. She was in contact with him before. She thought enough to contact him after his family, after his arrest. She says the family did not treat her as an advisor. Legal sources that spoke with me in Pennsylvania said that the family considered her as an advisor. So perhaps she hadn't realized the family was using her in that way, but that's how the family felt. And she did now is saying that she's saying, one, she wants to, in her memoir that she's writing, she's going to include a chapter on my student. That's her words, my student, Bryan Kohberger. And also, two, she told Brian Enton that she would jump at the chance, basically, to interview Bryan Kohberger in prison. And that had been on her mind, something she'd been thinking about, according to her, for the past 2.5 years. So again, I repeat, I'm sure she's an honorable woman, an honorable professor. Certainly she's accomplished, but maybe she's being disingenuous in describing these events. Maybe she's trying to be a lofty academic while at the same time score a very important and potentially revealing interview. I don't blame her for that attitude or those actions, but I don't think she's being totally candid in her explanation.
It's wild, right? To have a murderer affiliated directly with her via school, right? I mean, usually she goes to the prison and talks to these guys, and now we have this. He actually took several of her classes, not just one.
He took 4 of her classes. She took the class, I think, psychological sleuthing, which she calls my death class. In one of the classes that he took, he has to go through the murder house at DeSalle University. What's the murder house? It's an old 19th century, quite pretty stone building just off campus. And inside it, they have mannequins covered with red paint that are made to look like a murder scene. That was Bryan Kohberger's first exposure to a murder scene.
We watched a video on DeSales, and it showed the murder house that the students go in. And ironically, it's south of campus, and it's on Taylor Drive.
You can walk from campus. I went there. It's a very pretty little 19th century stone house, and sort of has, I think, has a blue door.
Did you get to go in?
I didn't go in. I saw the video. I went up to the windows. It was locked when I was there. After Brian's arrest, they kept locking the house.
Oh, I bet.
I mean, interesting too. You know, Dr. Ramsden's writes that people who fantasize build an appetite, she says, for the real thing. And perhaps that is what many levels happened to Brian. He was caught up in this world, he fantasized about it, and now he had to experience the real thing, just as Dr. Ramsden very perceptively predicted. However, in this case, she managed to miss, as she calls it, the red flags that were Kohberger's. I mean, after his arrest, she was convinced, as she explained it, of his innocence. She thought he was an interested student. He worked hard. He was very respectful. But then when he produced his alibi, remember his alibi that he was off at 4 a.m, freezing night, looking at the clouds when there was no witnesses. Well, she said that's when she began to suspect that maybe he was guilty. And if he had an alibi, why wasn't he screaming it? Why wasn't his lawyer screaming it from the rooftops and getting him out of jail? That's when she began to rethink things.
I heard her say that. And I was thinking to myself, she didn't think the DNA was damning. I mean, as someone with her, experience, that DNA on the knife sheath was pretty damning.
I mean, I can't speak for her, but again, the Kohberger's team was trying to get rid of the DNA in a very specious way. They were saying, yes, the DNA on the knife sheath is Kohberger's. It was his touch DNA. However, the real question is, how did the knife sheath get there? And the knife sheath, they said, was planted by the real perpetrators. Then they tried to run by Judge Hippler the name of four of the real perpetrators. And the judge said, this is fabricated evidence. This is sheer speculation. You can't introduce this into court. And what I also find particularly interesting and infuriating is that Ann Taylor named four people, which the judge said she had no evidence. She put them into the record. The records have been sealed. Who knows how long they'll remain sealed? But she was ready to impugn these people's reputation forever, brand them as potential murderers in court. To me, that seems like a step too far for the defense of your client.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts because I heard Steve I'm sorry, we have a little bit of feedback. I heard Steve Gonsalves actually mention that Bryan was going to try to blame, a deceased vet, and I immediately thought of Bryan Kohberger as being maybe one of those people.
It doesn't look that way because in the while the motion by the defense team was redacted, the judge makes reference to it that those people were all within walking distance. They all were in the neighborhood. Kohberger lived in Washington State, close to Bryan, and the one person who didn't live there was someone who had seen Kaylee in a store and approached her to ask her out, and then backed away at the last minute. He was just some guy being attracted by a very pretty young woman.
So that in your research, you found out that was not affiliated with Kohberger at all, the incident with Kaylee?
Yes, and I also found out, to the best of my knowledge, the Kohberger Brent wasn't associated with that. I saw police reports where earlier, before all this occurred, like 6 or 8 months, he was picked up by the Washington police in Pullman for talking to a manhole. He heard voices coming out of the manhole.
Man. Poor guy.
Yeah. I mean, really, it's a real tragedy. He was someone who goes off to fight for his country. He comes back ruined, and the government, VA, doesn't give him the help he needs.
Yeah, it's absolutely tragic. And it was interesting, though, when Bryan and his dad got pulled over, that they were all chatty about that incident that was going on with Brent.
Yes, I think, as I describe it in the book and subsequent research in recent weeks, Michael Kohberger, Bryan's father, as soon as he gets out to Pullman, he begins to suspect that things aren't right with his son. He's seen his moods before. He's seen his son's volatile states before. He's been on the opposite end of it before, and he immediately decides to tread carefully. He also is going across country on this 4-day trip. He's sitting shoulder to shoulder with his son in a white Hyundai Elantra. And every policeman in the country, is on the lookout for a white Hyundai Elantra. And the father knows this is the car they're looking for. And he also knows that his very problematic son lives just 9 miles away from the scene where 4 young people were murdered. So in his mind, I think he's thinking of death and murder. And when he's stopped by the police, when he sees the sirens, who knows what his first thought was? Did he think they were coming for his son? Perhaps so. And in this state, he blurts out what's on his mind. It's a non sequitur going on about Bryan Kohberger and his being shot that day. But the father is so keyed up. He's in the course of this journey, and it's an amazing journey. He's coming step by step closer to the realization that he might have a son as a murderer. And this journey, too, from what I've been hearing, what I've reported, is one of the 2 reasons why Bryan Kohberger ultimately accepts his plea deal. The first reason is, go back to the Dateline episode, where it's revealed for the first time that Kohberger made a phone call for about 54 minutes long on approximately 6 a.m. on the morning after the murders, about less than 2 hours after the murders. according to the reporting I've done, and I was tangentially involved in the Dateline program. I had no real role, but I was a bit around the periphery. It was Kohberger was speaking with his mother. The phone was registered to the father. That conversation, whatever was said, only Kohberger and whomever he spoke with know for sure. But it's been speculated that he was talking to his mother within 2 hours of the murders, and that he might have said things to her that would allow her to suspect. He didn't confess to her, but would allow her to suspect that her son was involved in these events. Now that the Dateline had revealed that the authorities knew about this phone call, the Kohbergers never imagined that the authorities would know about this phone call. She would have to be, or they suspected that she would be put on stand to testify to what was said during that conversation. And if she lied or if she refused to answer, she could possibly be put in legal jeopardy. Same could Kohberger's father about that cross-country trip. So when this was brought to Bryan, that your parents are going to be put in possible legal jeopardy, as it was explained to me, he didn't feel any sort of guilt towards them or remorse. Those emotions are too normal for him, but he did feel a certain kinship with the hell that he's put them in, and to save them from legal complications, and also, of course, to save his own life from a firing squad, he went to, or when Ann Taylor asked him to cut a plea deal, he finally agreed. What's more perplexing is why then when Ann Taylor went to Bill Thompson, the prosecutor, why did he agree?
Good question.
And I have some theories about that too. I have a piece coming out in Airmail this weekend where I talk about it a bit. But one can see a pattern from the very beginning by the honorable men in positions of authority in the state of Idaho who just sort of want this whole thing to go away. I mean, you go back to the beginning. There was Judge who couldn't wait to get it moved to Boise outside of Moscow. And then as soon as the case is moved, he says, okay, I'm resigning. I've had enough. This is just too much for me. Then there's Chief Fry. Chief Fry gets his man after the 7-week investigation, heading the task force. He breaks down in tears, full of emotion, announcing this arrest. And then not long after that, he retires. And now he's he's the police chief of a town in Washington state. Then there's Judge Hippler, who when he gets the case, the first day he's in the courtroom, he announces to the courtroom, well, I'd like to say I'm happy to be here, but why should we start with an untruth? He didn't want this either. And the archetypal incident is the university demolishes the murder house. They can't wait to get it out of the way. They want it out of people's minds as if people will forget. And I think there was no appetite for the prosecution by Bill Thompson to keep this case going. They wanted to,
get it done and over with.
Get him sent to jail to life and forget about the details, forget about the $4 million or so that the state taxpayers have so far paid to get this investigation going, and forget about the parents who want answers. Let's just see if we can wrap this up. Because the people involved in the case, they've been living through their own sort of internal hell for the past 2.5 years. This is not fun for them. And so they wanted to move on. And the tragedy is, though, I believe, at least this is my theory, that no one will ever be able to move on. This is a case that's not about survivors, but only about victims.
Yeah, sadly, I agree. What are your thoughts on the UI president actually writing a book? Everybody's under gag, right? Even the families can't speak in this 2.5 years, but he writes a book, names Kohberger. That whole university thing, do you think that coincides with like wanting it to all go away?
I think the university behaved atrociously in this whole situation. I think the university never lived up to, never pursued the investigations of drugs on campus on Fraternity Row, even if they weren't connected and they clearly weren't connected to this murder. There sure was a lot of drug traffic on Fraternity Row at Moscow, in Moscow at University of Idaho. The whole decision to tear down the murder house, that people would just forget, well, also was a coolly pragmatic decision, because why did the university do this? As it was explained to me, I was told the university in large part made this decision because when parents would come with their prospective students to the university, they would go by the murder house. This was a tourist attraction, just the way the library was, the rec center with its famous climbing wall, and this was discouraging parents, perhaps rightfully so, from sending their children to the University of Idaho. So the University of Idaho just wanted it gone. I think they behaved atrociously in this entire incident.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that early on you had reported that, about the Moscow police getting, the daily updates every day. And that was pretty wild too.
Yeah, the Moscow
Or not
police.
Moscow, but Moscow giving the UI the daily updates.
Yeah, I mean, Chief Fry had also been a policeman before this at the university. That's where he started. He's part of the university police force. The whole thing was just was not done with a great deal of professionalism.
I agree. Skipping back to Kohberger's family, I just have one more question because it just recently was reported. Excuse me. And I think it was Patterson's book that's getting ready to come out. I think I read this in People, but they did say that Ramsland is helping his sister with the book. And I think you reported that as well.
I reported that his sister was writing a book. I did not report that Ramsland was helping her. She's denied, Ramsland, to me, that she's helping anyone with any book.
Okay.
But so that's all but her accounts keep changing, her being Ramsland, not the sister, being changing almost daily, it seems, to whoever she last talked to. At one point, she said to Brian Entin, I have to wonder whether or not I played any role in creating Bryan Kohberger and pushing him to this incident. That's an approximation of her words. Then when she emailed me last Friday, I think it was, she said, I feel no complicity, no guilt in this at all.
So you've been in contact with her?
I've had an email exchange, very terse, 3 separate emails where she explains in just a sentence or 2 in each of the emails why she didn't want to talk further with me.
Well, it was interesting because after the Brian Entin interview, she was scheduled to go on a YouTube channel, actually 2, Anjanette Levy and Surviving the Survivor. And she canceled both appearances and said that her lawyer told her not to talk to anybody anymore because a journalist twisted her words from the Entin interview.
Well, the Entin interview is out there for everyone to listen to. I don't see how you can twist the words when the words are right in front of you and you quote from them directly. If that's twisting your words, well, I think I would disagree respectfully with the professor. I mean, also, I have her words from her book, too. And she is the one who said she saw no flags. And she said she has to wonder if she was in some way to blame for this.
Yeah, I find it interesting that her life's work is to actually try to nip these kind of people in the bud and learn how to identify these kinds of people earlier. And here she had one in her class and didn't. So I'm actually questioning, like, where is this research even doing any good? Because she's paying BTK for this information. If it's not, helping, it's weird to me, right?
I mean, I wouldn't want to impugn her academic credentials or her research, but again, I'd reiterate, I think she's being a bit disingenuous. She wants to maintain to the world that she's an academic living in an ivory tower, and she's just looking at these with a scholarly detachment. But then she'll say in the next interview, for the past 2.5 years, I've been in effect chomping at the bit. That's my characterization, not her words. Chomping at the bit to get into Bryan's mind and to see what he was actually doing. And then she further makes the case why she would be a good investigator. Why? Because she knows him so well. She knows what questions to ask.
Mm-hmm.
I would suggest, and I do this in my airmail article this weekend, what are the best questions to ask? Well, they're already out there. We've seen the questions that Bryan asked in his master's thesis when he's preparing to interview prisoners. He sent them out, hoping the prisoners would read them and then respond to him as to why they started their crime, what was in their minds at the time of the crime, were they planning it, did they pick out a specific victim, and so on. I think it's now ironic that these questions that Bryan posed to other people will now perhaps, if Bryan would ever answer them, we would find the reason about how he was on his way to the house on King Road before he even knew it existed. This would understand a bit of his psychological development. And so, again, I think Bryan, the forensic psychologist, should answer his own questions.
Yeah, I did hear her say she's, she would have the best questions for him.
Well, at the same time saying that's not why she's doing this. She's really calling the parents because she was concerned and as a consideration.
Right. And I also found it interesting, it's like, is she gonna pay Bryan? Is he gonna get part of the proceeds like BTK did?
I mean, I leave that to, I don't know if she'll even get to
like who even makes
him.
That decision,
Yeah, I think, what does Bryan need money for? But I think there are ways to funnel money to family members or whomever. But at this point, she said she hasn't contracted to write any book. All she's been talking about is doing a chapter in her memoirs, which she's working on now. At least that's what she told me last Friday.
So you went out to PA in your research. You didn't just go to Idaho or in Washington. You went to PA, correct?
Several times to Pennsylvania, yes.
Okay. Did you find out anything about Bryan's friend Jeremy and his mother? Did you ever get any stories about Jeremy Saba?
Nothing that I would feel comfortable repeating because I couldn't substantiate anything. A lot of kids hanging around with nothing to do, and there's someone coming to interview them, and they'll tell you anything. And some of it I was able to check out, but a lot of it, which was tantalizing, I couldn't connect the dots.
Yeah, so you didn't find that he had a whole lot of friends out there, really?
No, but I did find that he had people that he did drugs with. I mean, he was a real druggie, and that's an interesting part of his life because it fits in. He had been all these things. He'd been a heroin addict. He'd been a rotten student. He had weighed, 125 pounds approximately, overweight, and yet he's able to turn this around. How many people who can kick heroin, who can lose 125 pounds, who can go from being a mediocre student to getting into a distinguished university? And yet, in spite of all his accomplishments, in spite of everything he's done to reinvent himself, in some ways, biology is destiny, as Freud said. He is stuck into the person he is, and he can't transcend it. And ultimately, the only way he can function in this world is as a monster.
It's hard to believe almost. Did you ever get any information on the book that they recovered from Bryan's house, his parents' house, that he had underlined? Or do you have any thoughts on what that could be?
I mean, do I have thoughts? I have thoughts. He had driver's license from other people. I mean, these are all speculations. These are all things we'll never get. I think it would be promiscuous of me at best to name a text because it would be sheer speculation, sheer guesswork at this point. But these are things that I'd like to know, that I think people would like to know. I think the families of the victims would like to know. And it'll be interesting to see what Judge Hippler is going to demand of Bryan at the sentencing hearing. I think he'll make a sort of pro forma allocution in the sense that Bryan will have to, in effect, I killed these people, I broke into the house, but we won't have any details. And then the interesting question will be, will Judge Hippler accept this? Will he say, okay, this satisfies the rule of law, the letter of the law for an allocution, but he won't press him for any details. I think he won't be pressed for any details. I think all the sort of questions that you're asking, that I'm intrigued about, that the families want to know about, will be buried. They'll be buried as deep as that knife somewhere in the Palouse. I don't think we'll ever find that knife.
You don't think that will come out?
I don't think it'll come out until Bryan wants to tell people where it is. I don't think Judge Hippler will ask him specifics about it. I hope I'm wrong. I'd like to know where it is. I'd like to know how he managed to get out of the house on King Road without leaving a bloody trail in his car. I do know the investigators took his car apart piece by piece. They took apart the gear shifts, the doors, everywhere. Mm-hmm. They found not a trace of blood, nothing. You know, I'd like to know how he did all this, how well he planned. I'd like to know if leaving the knife sheath behind was something that was done in a sort of panic, or when he was overwhelmed by two young women, he had now to fight Kaylee, who was fighting back at him as if she were a tiger, as the father said, or did he leave it behind as a sort of souvenir? Because the knife sheath had been wiped down. It just was this one little speck of DNA under the button snap, and that he inadvertently left behind. Perhaps he had, not realized, clearly hadn't realized there was DNA on it, but perhaps he left the knife sheath there purposely. And if it wasn't for that DNA, he might have gotten away with it. We still might be discussing this case. We still might be discussing theories about drugs, about fraternity boys, who knows what, looking for different cars.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. When you were out in PA, this is one thing I've been wondering about. I got two more questions, and then I'll let you go because I know we're at about a half an hour. When you went out there, did you find out anything about Kohberger's parents and the grand jury for the Dana Smithers case? Was that anything that you ever heard anything about?
I heard that the authorities out there were trying to check things out, and one local prosecutor was trying to grab a headline, but nothing panned out. It makes sense, clearly, that you would investigate had he been involved in any other crimes before. It makes sense to expect that when he was ordering, Kohberger was looking at knives on Amazon after the killings, that he was looking not to replace his knife, to go out killing again. I have no doubt in my mind that if he hadn't been caught, there would have been other murders, but nothing that tied him to anything in Pennsylvania. Again, this is one of the questions I'd like him to be asked during the allocution, or certainly in prison.
Do you think he'll speak at sentencing?
I think he'll give terse answers. I don't think he'll be very forthcoming. I don't think he'll speak at first in prison. I don't think he's going to cooperate with anyone in prison. I think he will wait until he's good and bored, and just as he did with the plea deal, and suddenly he realizes he has no other choices, and he'll have fun. He'll invite forensic psychologists at first to come and visit him. He'll feel as if he's a peer with them, one of that academic fraternity, and he will discuss his crime, and he will feel complete. He will have become, in that way, the forensic psychologist that he always wanted to be.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. One final question, Howard. Is there anything that you could share with us that you found out in your research that was not in the book?
If I didn't include it in the book or in subsequent articles for airmail, I didn't feel confident in it. It would just be speculation. And, there are enough theories out there, enough mistakes out there. I certainly have made errors in reporting the things that you hear from a source and it turns out later not to be correct. At this point, we have the possibility that we can hear directly from the man who admits to the crimes. We have a prosecutor who could ask him from the crimes about the specifics. We have a judge who can ask him for specifics. I think the time is now to put the pressure on them before the sentencing on July 23rd to maybe get to the bottom of things, to ask the questions that need to be asked and to demand that Kohberger answer them. You know, the judge at this sentencing, if he's not satisfied with Kohberger's answers, he still has a legal right to say the plea deal is null and void. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that would ever happen in Idaho, but there is still that legal possibility.
Should be interesting.
Certainly shall be.
Well, thank you for coming on today. And, maybe we can talk again after.
I'd be glad to. You've got my email. You can reach out to me anytime. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, I appreciate you. And thank you for your time.
Okay. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, that was exciting stuff. So what do you guys think? Do you guys think that he's spot on with his research? Because he doesn't seem to want to be sharing anything that he can't verify through his sources. I'm extremely grateful that Mr. Blum came on today, and I cannot wait for us to read this. I know he'd rather everybody buy it, but we're going to read it. Maybe we'll do it for members because I think he wants everybody to buy it. Sorry, Mr. Blum. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy, right? You've got Catherine Ramsland, changing her wording, using specific words to be like, oh, I didn't talk to him, after the murders. I didn't talk to him since 2022, which was spring of 2022, when Bryan bought the knife. No, none, Skolnick, none, zero love. I think that that's going to be an interesting thing to keep an eye on because, like I said, Ramsland canceled appearances after she did the interview with Enton. I don't know what journalist, she thinks twisted her words, but we definitely covered her interview with Bryan. And I didn't agree with what she was, planning on doing, but she canceled her appearances and she hasn't done any more. So I'm curious to see what she'll do. You did, S. Awesome. And then what else? Oh, when we're talking about the underlined book, it is in the Patterson book that's coming out soon. I don't know when it comes out, but I want to show you guys this. Let's look at this really quick. I think it was in People. Hold on. Bryan Kohberger. They're connecting him with Elliot Rodgers. So here it is, the New York Post. Let's pull this up. And I want to thank you guys for joining today. If you guys haven't hit the like button, please take a moment and do that now. We have here Bryan Kohberger committed the Idaho college murders and eerie similarities to an incel mass killer. So let's go down. Now I don't know a whole lot about Elliot Rodger, but I find it interesting that we had Papa Rodger. Yes, the incel kid. Thank you, Crafting. But he also was being, he was being ignored by a girl named Maddie. So it says, I report in the Idaho 4 for the people that closest to the victims believe that for all sorts of reasons, he had targeted just one, Maddie Mogan. It was her room he went straight to. It's her room you could see from the road if you parked your car at the cul-de-sac behind the King Roadhouse which the police believe he did multiple times. And his actions before the murders are eerily striking resemblance to Elliot Rodger. Rodger inspired the incel world Kohberger was deeply immersed in, which we don't know if he was immersed in that, by the time he got to Washington State University. Incels are members of a movement of frustrated men, all virgins, that sprang up on 4chan in 2014, just hours after Elliot Rodger, a privileged student at Santa Barbara City College, committed mass murder and then suicide. The idea of the movement, started in Rodger's honor, is that one day the incels will succeed in their beta revolution and overthrow women. When Rodger lost his only, now this is about Elliot Rodger, when Rodger lost his only childhood male friend, and after a female friend called Maddie had started ignoring him, he was triggered and began to plan the diabolical end. He intended his final act to be so performative that it would catapult him into global fame. The last words he wrote in his journal were, "Finally, I could show the world my true worth." Here's some of what Elliot Rodger had to say about his Maddie in My Twisted World, his 137-page manifesto. Quote, "The first real friend I made in the United States was a girl named Maddie Humphreys. Maddie would eventually come to represent everything I hate and despise, everything that is against me, and everything that I am against." Then Elliot goes on to say, "I stalked her Facebook for a bit, and I saw that she was the exact image of everything I hated in women. She was a popular, spoiled USC girl who partied with her hot, beautiful, blonde-haired clique of friends. My hatred for them all grew from each picture I saw on her profile." This is him. This is Elliot Rodger. "They represented everything that was wrong with this world. I would take great delight in torturing and flaying her and every single one of her spoiled, obnoxious, evil friends." Now, here's a question. Is it just a coincidence that Maddie Mogan was also a beautiful blonde sorority sister? Now, listen to this. Bryan Kohberger, of course, had exhibited many incel characteristics. His father, Michael Kohberger, recently told a former neighbor, Connie Saba. That's why I asked Howard about Jeremy Saba. Jeremy Saba died. He's one of Bryan Kohberger's friends. But listen what Bryan Kohberger did to Jeremy's mother. Now listen. So this is also going to be in Patterson's book. His father, Michael, recently told a former neighbor, Connie Saba, that Bryan, quote, "wasn't the same person after the drugs," end quote. Both Bryan and Connie's son, Jeremy Saba, so Jeremy was Bryan's buddy, but Jeremy was a popular athletic kid whom young loner Bryan hero worshipped, and they became heroin addicts together. Both had gone to rehab, but Jeremy died in March of 2021 from an overdose. So Jeremy Saba died the year before Bryan went to WSU in 2021. So it was 9 months before he bought the K-Bar. Bryan's first turn to the dark side was in his mid-teens. Now listen what he did to Connie Saba. Bryan's first turn to the dark side was in his mid-teens when he stole from Connie, which was his buddy's mom, for his heroin habit. Actually, it was worse than that. He phoned her when Jeremy had been arrested for the first time for a DUI and drug possession. Bryan said to Jeremy's mom, "I'd like to go visit Jeremy in jail. When are you going? He asked her. Well, Jeremy's mom told him the time, and she was surprised when Bryan didn't show up to go with her to visit Jeremy in jail. But when she got home from visiting Jeremy, she discovered that someone had broken into her house and stolen her iPad. She was less surprised. She knew who the culprit was. She knew it was Bryan. A year or so later, he showed up suddenly. A year later, he comes back to Jeremy Saba's mom and comes to her kitchen and admits that he stole from her. And she immediately understood what was going on. He was in rehab, and atonement is part of the process. She said it seemed as if he had made a full recovery from addiction, but appearance can be deceptive. So I thought that was interesting. And then if you go to Elliot Rodgers, this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to his manifesto and see what page 118 is because Bryan Kohberger had something underlined on page 118. Manifesto PDF. Let's see. I don't know even how many pages are in this, but this is crazy. Okay, there is a page 118. Let's go to 118 and see what it says. Because Bryan in his parents' house had a book with something underlined on page 118. Oh man. Okay. The website, we're just going to skim through this. The website PUA Hate is very depressing. It shows how bleak and cruel the world is due to the evilness of women. I tried to show it to my parents to give them some sort of dose of reality. Wait, hold on. I just lost my page. Here's 118. Okay. As to why I'm so miserable, they never understood why I'm so miserable. They have always had the delusion that everything is going well for me, especially my father. When I sent the link of PUAHate.com to my parents, none of them even bothered to look at the posts. After a spring season spent in absolute despair while the other young people lived healthy lives of sexual pleasure, summer arrived. Summer is even worse than spring, especially in Santa Barbara. Flocks of hot young girls go out in their shorts and bikinis, further tantalizing my sex-starved body every time I look at them, knowing that they gleefully show off their desirable forms, yet they would never give me a chance to be their boyfriend, only increased my already boiling hatred towards all women. I could not leave my apartment without seeing at least a few of them. The only place I could go where I'd be at peace was the lake park in Goleta. I spent a lot of time there, trying to establish a sense of peace and serenity whenever my loneliness in Isla Vista became too unbearable. As I looked at all of the beautiful trees around me and the towering mountains in the background, I wondered how a world so beautiful could be such a dark and cruel place. Indeed, a beautiful environment is the darkest hell if you have to experience it all alone, while other men get to enjoy the company of women. I had nothing left to live for but revenge. Women must be punished for their crimes of rejecting such a magnificent gentleman as myself. All of those popular boys must be punished for enjoying heavenly lives and having sex with all the girls, while I had to suffer in lonely virginity. It was already June, and I had been living in Santa Barbara for 2 years, 2 whole years. I lived in a college town full of young, attractive students who partied and had sex all the time, and I didn't get to experience any of it. No one invited me to any parties. And in the times I went out by myself to Isla Vista, none of the beautiful blonde girls showed any interest in having sex with me. Not one girl. These are crimes that cannot go unpunished. The more I thought about all these injustices that were dealt to me, the more eager I became for revenge. It's all I had left. I didn't want to die, but I knew that I had to kill myself after I exacted my revenge to avoid getting captured and imprisoned. For a while, I had decided I had been deciding on whether I would exact my retribution in Isla Vista or Santa Barbara City College. In both places, I had suffered greatly at the hands of everyone there. I have seen attractive young couples walking around both places, and those were my targets. I wanted to kill as many attractive young couples as I possibly could. After a lot of thinking, I came to the conclusion that the day of retribution would take place in Isla Vista. On weekend nights, the streets of Isla Vista are always flooded with young couples and good looking popular kids walking to their parties. What better place is there to exact my retribution on my enemies? Every time I walked around Isla Vista, trying to meet girls or fit in with popular kids, I've always been treated with disdain, as if I'm an inferior mouse. On the day of retribution, the tables will indeed turn. I mused to myself. I will be a god, and they will all be animals that I can slaughter. They are animals. They behave like animals, and I will slaughter them like the animals they are. Right, locked and loaded. I'm wondering if he had this underlined. On the day of retribution, it came to a point where I had to set a date for the day of retribution. I originally considered doing it on the Halloween of 2013. That is when the entire town erupts in raucous partying, sorry. There would literally be thousands of people crowded together who I could kill with ease. And the goal was to kill everyone in Isla Vista, to utterly destroy that wretched town. But then, after seeing footage of the previous Halloween events on YouTube, I saw there were too many cops walking around. It would be too risky. One gunshot from a cop will end everything. The day of retribution would have to be on a normal party. Oh, fuck. Look at this. The day of retribution would have to be on a normal party weekend. So I set it for sometime during November of 2013. Buddy the dog. Hence, yes, 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 yes. It was a big game weekend. That's crazy. Do you think that we'll ever find out who did that to Buddy? I didn't say BK wrote this, chick bait. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm reading Elliot Rodgers' manifesto because I'm trying to figure out what page 118 that Bryan Kohberger had underlined. That's it. That's all. Hey, Jiznit. I think DM saw the knife, or BK took something from Xana's room. Said he had something like a canister, right? All right, I think I found it. Is it 2 days ago? Oh no, this is about the Q-tip. What do you guys think about that? They found a Q-tip with his dad's DNA. I still want to know if we're going to get anything unsealed from Pennsylvania. Yeah, some sort of a container. Really? It seems it was a juvenile because it was redacted. I didn't know they actually caught someone for Buddy. But if he did it, would they ever like come out and say he did it? I just don't know why we can't get a whole story, you know? Are we going to be able to see interrogation video? Are we going to be able to see body cam, any kind of body cam? Are we going to be able to see dash cam of him in the cop car saying, hey, after this is all said and done, we could go get coffee? No, the Q-tip was found in the trash in Pennsylvania. It matched his father's. So they found the Q-tip. They ran the DNA and they said, this is the father of the person whose DNA is on the knife sheath. That's how they did that. I don't think we know. I would like, I don't think the actual arrest will be on body cam because it was like SWAT team. But don't you think we should see all the pictures of the evidence? Like if they, the IDs, the shovel from the car, the books, the notebooks, the sweatshirts, those should all be like, pictures and evidence. But Howard Blum doesn't seem to be very confident that we're going to see all of that. Seems weird that it was a juvenile to perfectly skin a dog like that. That's weird. And whoever it is, they need a mental evaluation because if that was a juvenile that did it, that's really concerning. Yeah, I don't know. He seems to think they're going to keep it locked down tight. But there's also Catherine Ramsland's book about BTK that could be the page 118, right? They say by March 2026 is when we'll see the traffic stop. You mean the one that he got pulled over and was detained? We have to wait that long? But that's not through the courts, though. I'm talking like evidence discovery. My glasses are crooked. It's bugging me. Evidence and discovery. Like we did in Watts. We got like 1,200 pages of discovery. Mr. Tomato Head, I don't think Bryan was an incel. Wasn't he into Asian women and had an Asian girlfriend? I don't know what kind of women he was into. He shared an office at WSU with an Asian exchange student. And seems that she fancied him, but he didn't fancy her in that way, is what I heard. And I don't think he's ever had a girlfriend to note. You think we'll get breadcrumbs over time? I agree with that. I agree with that, Ministry. Since there's no appeals. Right. He had a bunch of driver's licenses in a glove, in a box, in his car. Didn't Kaylee's dad say Ramsland is writing a book with BK's sister? Yes, he did. And I think James Patterson reports that in his book as well. I don't want to misspeak, but I'm pretty sure that he does. James Patterson, Bryan Kohberger. Let's see if there's anything new that's come out. He talks about the similarities to Elliot Rodger. 8 days ago. Oh, here we go. I found that article. Let's go over this really quick. So freaked out. Inside text sent by friends of Idaho victims as horror of murders dawned on them. A new book by James Patterson sheds new light on the nightmare. Yeah, this isn't it. But this is the book. It comes out July 14th. So right after the right after the documentary on the 11th. So if you guys are interested in this, um, I think they should release whose driver's licenses he had, right? But I don't think they will. That's what is crazy. I don't think they're going to tell us whose they are. I mean, I hope we do. Or maybe, Gonsalves's will find out. I don't know. I'm going to drop this link, though, if you guys want to take a look at Patterson's new book, which seems like they have talked to a lot of people as well. It seems like it's going to be pretty interesting. Here is the link to that book. Here, right here. This is James Patterson Books. He says, could incel culture, the toxic ideology linked to Bryan Kohberger, poison our sons' minds too? I explored this disturbing question in my latest piece for Daily Mail. Hmm. All right. Well, Miss G said Kaylee's driver's license was missing. Yeah, she said that, did we get all her IDs and her debit cards? And I don't think they did. But there should be pictures of all this evidence. I mean, we got pictures and video of Shanann Watts' clothes she was found in. I would feel like we could at least see what they gathered as evidence in his parents' house and stuff. No, that's not what they said, Mike. I'll show you actually what they said because it was never talked about. They never talked about the IDs. It was in the search warrant that they found them. We never had it explained whose they were, where they came from, or anything like that, unfortunately. Um Here, I'll share this. I mean, PA has a lot of documents. Maybe we should just start FOIA requesting it and see what they're going to give out. So this is the search warrant. Let's scroll down. This isn't what I wanted. Weren't they found in the car? Swabs, Ziploc bag with pink zipper, 7 quarters, plastic baggie with green zipper, 36 dimes, 32 nickels, 8 pennies, gloves, receipts, car insurance card, car registration, hiking boots, comfort in room key holder and stay information, tire irons, shovel, goggles, floor mats, reflective vest, used water bottles, wrench, door panel, seats and seat cushions, headrest, seatbelt, visor, fiber, brake pedal, gas pedal, phone charger, band-aid, wrappers, maps, documents, and seatbelt boot. That doesn't say the IDs. All right, here's another one. One silver Defiant silver flashlight, medical style gloves. Those are his clothes. And look at his dad had to sign these. No, that's Brian right here. That's his signature. We should compare that to his signature on the nervousness. Compare it to the plea deal. This isn't it either. I'm just not finding it for some reason. Why do you think Bryan said, "Don't worry, I'm gonna help you," to Xana? Well, this is what they found in his Washington apartment, which they said held no um evidentiary value at all. A glove, a Walmart receipt with the Dickies tag, two Marshall's receipts, dust container from a Bissell Power Force vacuum, 8 possible hair strands. Possible hair strands? They don't know if they're hair strands or not. What did they think they were? 1 fire stick, 1 possible animal hair strand, 1 possible hair, 1 possible hair, 1 possible hair, 1 possible hair, 1 computer tower, 1 collection of dark red spot, 2 cuttings from the uncased pillow of reddish brown stains, and 2 top and bottom mattress cover, both labeled C, multiple stains. 1 tested. And they found nothing in there. You think he might have said that to get her from fighting? Okay, here we go. List of items: knife, book with underlining on page 118. That's got to be significant. The Glock, the Swiss Smith and Wesson knife, Acer laptop, folder containing vehicle paperwork. Let's see. Criminal psychology book, which is what he would have taken with Ramsland, and then also documents and DeSales University notebook. So tell me he wasn't referencing notes from his classes with Ramsland. Shop vac, note to dad from Bryan. Yeah, for some reason I can't find it where it says that, but it did say IDs in a glove in a box. Right here. Wait a minute. Newsweek reported back on, when was this? April 11th of 2023. Newsweek reports an ID card connected to the murder of 4 University of Idaho students was reportedly found when authorities searched his home. Look at one ID that was found is reportedly connected to someone in the home. Why wasn't that ever brought up? According to court documents unsealed, ID cards inside a glove inside a box were among the items police seized. News Nation reported that an ID connected to someone from the home where the slayings took place were found during a search. Oh, Christ. In an appearance on News Nation, former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer said the ID in question was found concealed in a glove in a box. The reports that IDs were hidden in a box or glove compartment can meet the standard, but we need to know the specifics. IDs were only generally described on the inventory list for the search, so connection to the murders is unclear. Hmm. I wonder if we'll ever find out whose they were. I feel like we should. It was said to be connected to the crime, but not the victims. So I don't know. Yeah, that's weird, right? The PCA says multiple. Yeah, multiple IDs in a glove in a box. I wonder whose. I mean, if he had my ID, I'd want to know. Wouldn't you? I believe he said he was here to help you, Tizana, because she was slowly dying and he thought he was doing her a favor out of putting her out of her misery more, but I know. Yeah, I don't believe in Donna Serafina. If he was in his room wiping blood all over himself, he would have left something behind. They were at his parents in PA. Remember when Chris found, yep. Underlining it like a textbook, yep. Let's hope this never happens again. Maybe it was an ID badge to get into the lab. Maybe. Thank you, Texas. Spent a lot of time in the sun yesterday, like 4 hours. So, and I'm getting ready to go to the pool here in just a little bit. So I'm going to wrap this up. But I want to say again, thank you to Howard Blum for coming on today. You can pick up his book, When the Night Comes Falling, on Amazon. There it is. He said he'd come on anytime. So if we read this, we have some questions, we can bring him back on anytime. So anyways, if you guys would hit that like button, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And until the next one, stay safe and hit the like button. Let me know in the comment section what you think of this interview today, what you think of Howard's book, if you read it. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Everybody stay safe. Hit the like button. Stay cool out there. It is a hot one today. Bye, guys.
I don't give a damn. I don't really care about you and your problems. I don't give a damn. You talk way too much. I have heard enough about you and your problems. I don't give a damn. I don't give a damn. Damn, 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 damn. You wanna be with me. You wanna feel something real, but I'm feeling differently. You're making plans to get to friends, but don't wanna face the fact that I ain't got time, I ain't got time, I ain't got time for that. Staying up late, sleeping all day, dreaming about Cadillacs. Buying new shoes, hanging by the pool, sipping on Coke and Jack. Calling my phone when you feel alone, but I'll never call you back. 'Cause I ain't got time, I ain't got time, I ain't got time for that. I don't give a damn, I don't really care about you and your problems. I don't give a damn. You talk way too much. I have heard enough about you and your problems. I don't give a damn. I don't give a damn. Damn, 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 damn. You're mad at me for not giving you comfort. You say that I'm away so much and now you don't feel the way you felt when we were younger. But that's okay for me, 'cause I don't give a damn. I don't really care about you and your problems. I don't give a damn.